What's up, everybody? Matt Inman back once again for another episode of 3 Minutes or Less, where I review a movie in 3 minutes or less, or it's absolutely free, and this time we're taking a look at Creep 2. I also wanted to briefly apologize for if I seem a little off kilter in this video. I've been having some issues lately with a prowler hanging around the house the last few days. Like, shit has come up missing, things have been moved around. It's just been a really weird last few days, and I haven't really wanted anything to occupy me long enough to keep me from, well, defending my fucking house. But I also want to keep you all entertained, so I figured a 3 minutes or less was a good compromise. It's short enough to where I can also keep my eye on things and hopefully catch this guy and keep you all entertained as well. It also only makes sense for me to give you all my brief thoughts on the original Creep so you can get an idea of my mindset going into the sequel. Creep is good in concept, but somewhat muddled in its execution. Mark Duplass is excellent as the charismatic madman, and there's some genuinely creepy and suspenseful moments peppered throughout the film. But that's unfortunately where my enjoyment for it stopped. Our lead protagonist was way too over-trusting and idiotic, and was involved in this situation that he got himself into way longer than he ever needed to in the movie. And that was my main issue with it, was believability, and that just kind of anchored the movie for me, in a way. I mean, the two golden rules for any found footage movie is to have a sense of believability and an understanding of why the camera is continuously rolling throughout the situation, and Creep 1 just had neither of these. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into Creep 2. You all know how this works. Regal, start the timer. Creep 2 stars Mark Duplass and Desiree Caven and is directed by Patrick Bryce, and revolves around our lead Sarah, who runs a YouTube series called Encounters, in which she answers weird and obscure Craigslist ads and gets the story of the people behind those ads. But whenever her finale episode comes around, she gets way more than she ever could bargain for. This is a found footage style horror movie and carries on that same motif from the first film, but I've got to be honest, it does a whole lot of things better than its predecessor, and let's get into those positives first. For one, it gets both of the aforementioned golden rules of found footage completely correct. From the get-go, Mark Duplass presents his character as someone that's pretty creepy, but also whose words you have to take with a grain of salt. So it's reasonably understandable why Sarah would be kind of unafraid of him, but also not really believe some of the claims that he spouts towards the beginning of the film. Aside from just being a total badass, of course. And she keeps the camera rolling for documentary purposes for both her and his benefit. So already from the get-go, we have the two golden rules in play that were desperately missing from the first film. Another positive that I have is the two performances from our leads are top-notch. Of course, Mark Duplass is excellent in everything that he does, but Desiree Caven pulls off this really underrated performance as Sarah, who, as I said before, is a total badass. But also, aside from that, the conversations that these two get into can be really hypnotic at some points. Some of the things that they talk about seem so genuine and real, and it forges this unique relationship between the two leads that I honestly haven't seen in many other movies of its kind. But that's kind of unfortunately where I get into where this movie doesn't really work, and that's as an overall horror feature. It's just not that scary. Nothing much happens throughout the duration of this movie, and mind you, it's only like an hour and 20 minutes long, so something should happen. I mean, something happens at the very beginning, and then something happens at the end that you can't really see. It's just kind of a nothing movie, and if there was one thing that I wish they'd had carried over from the first film, it was that thick fog of suspense that was present throughout. Instead, it's just replaced by a lot of talking. Albeit some of it fascinating talking, as I said, but just a lot of talking. That and some really, really awkward scenes. which the first film had in spades as well, but they were just subtler and more well done, in my opinion. I just can't really help but to think that this movie would have benefited from being marketed as a mumble-gore black comedy rather than just a straight-on horror thriller like it was. And that's no real fault of the film itself, but it's still a fault that it faces nonetheless. Overall, I'd really love to say that Creep 2 is better than its predecessor, but it really isn't at the end of the day. It's kind of just on par with the original, but for different reasons. If they had simply taken the protagonist, dialogue, and believability of this film and mixed it in with the horror and suspense of the first film, then I think you'd have a really damn good found footage horror experience on your hands. But as it stands, I can only really give Creep 2 a 50 out of 100. Here's to hoping that third time's the charm and that Creep 3 does it right, because Duplass's charismatic madman desperately deserves a good movie after 2 huge misses. And that about wraps it up for this review of Creep 2. If you've seen either Creep 1 or Creep 2, let me know what your thoughts on them are in the comments down below. And as always, I've been Matt Inman, and I will see you guys next. What's that fucking noise again? You serious? I'm sorry guys, this is really unprofessional of me. I don't normally do this, but I've got to get to the bottom of what this is right now. I'm really sorry. Actually, I'm gonna take you all with me, just in case. Sounded like it was coming from in here. God, I don't know why I'm doing this. This is how horror movies start. Hello? Of course the light doesn't work. Hello? Seriously, this isn't funny anymore. Just come out. We won't have a problem. A big one. Oh, God. The fuck? Oh, shit. Hello? Oh, no, fuck this. Let me out of here. Come on. It's locked.